Lovely such a lovely opportunity to share this evening, and it's very much an honour. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. So I'm going to share my screen this evening, and just for 20-25 minutes, and then my face will return, and we'll have enough time for questions at the end, as you were saying. Okay, so let me share my screen. Let's see if this works. Hey, great. Okay. So, the topic of my talk is going to be on self-management and how to use music. And a big welcome, and let's make a start. Thank you. I use this image here of a pathway that you can't really see where it ends, and that's on purpose, because in a sense this is going to be a bit like a journey where we don't know where it's going to end up, but we're on this path, and on this path together. So as I was saying, today we're going to spend roughly about 25 minutes talking about music and self-management. We're going to look at what is music. We're going to look at what is self-management and what is music therapy. Then I'm going to invite you into an exercise, and then after that we should have a good amount of time to have a discussion, if we can, for me to take any questions that you have. So just to begin with then, there is a slight sort of risk really in talking about what we're going to be talking about, and a slight risk in engaging in an activity with me. So I really want to just give you this disclaimer and just say, do take this risk and keep yourself safe. Keep yourself safe in this. Yeah. And also I'm really encouraging you to be curious. Such a wonderful thing that human beings as a species can do is be really curious and really caring. This is all about caring and working out between us what's the best way to care for ourselves.
Excuse me for disturbing, but we
No
can't
problem.
hear. There's
You can't?
several messages. We can't hear. Apologies.
No hearing at all. Okay. What I'm
No,
going
it's
to
the
do.
volume. Your volume needs to be a bit higher. I don't know.
Okay, no problem at all. How's that? Is that a bit better?
Yes, it is better now.
That's better. Thank you very much. Great, thank you. I didn't notice the chat. Thank you for putting those in. We can't hear him. I hope you can hear me better now. I've got quite a soft voice anyway.
Yes,
Okay, yeah, that should be lots better for you. Okay, good. So I'll just go over this again. And we're just there is a disclaimer that do take care of yourselves and keep yourself safe in this. There's a little bit of a risk in the exercise and things like that. So it's completely at your own pace. And I'll encourage you to be curious this evening, and really this is all about caring. It's about working out between us what's the best way of caring. So let's start with what is music? Let's get curious about that. There are sort of biological factors really in what makes music safe and what makes it conducive to people connecting together. Because from 3 weeks after conception, the ear, the brain and the heart are developing. Then after 3 months, you can hear what the difference is between sound and music. You can distinguish what is music. It's really a very useful way of communicating, and we treat our children like musical beings. We use music to communicate to them, and they use sound to communicate with us. And it's a way that we develop security in the relationships we have. And also it's a way that it's very much linked in with our emotions and our memories. And when we're teenagers, we there's music is very important, and it's something that we really remember. And it's a way that we can manage ourselves by listening to music and regulating our emotions in everyday life. We use it all the time. You know, it's definitely not it's definitely not magic, or powerful. It's more about a sensory experience for me. It's something that we hear and something that we feel. So the sort of magic or the power really is within us. It just goes very deep, really, and probably quite quickly. And that's why it sort of accesses the parts of us that are very primitive or very early in our development, or are emotional or physical. It's, in a sense, a mindful experience. It has an effect. It's not a mindless experience. You really need to sort of move your attention towards it and be aware of it. It's certainly not sort of magic. Music is more like a knife, really. It's Daniel Barenboim, who's a pianist. He often says that music is like a knife that you can cut the bread with to share, or you can use the knife to harm somebody. So it's neither a medicine or a toxin. It's a sort of sensorial, mindful experience, and it can actually make us ruminate. It's if you use music to go into the sort of darker parts of your mind, and you can use it also to get out of that again. I'll say sort of more about that as we go along. But our minds are really quite tricky, and you can see here on this diagram, I hope, how tricky our minds are. If we look at the blue arrows and writing, you can imagine, you can have in front of you your favourite meal, something that really, you're really drawn towards, something you really enjoy and take a lot of pleasure in, and you can have that in front of you, and your stomach acids and saliva will be activated. But because of our human ability to have such a fantastic imagination, we can also imagine that meal, and our stomach acids and saliva will be triggered. In a sense, it's the same as music. We can have music come into our ears, and it will have an effect if we engage in it. But also we can imagine the music as well. And it's like that for feelings of threat, feelings of fight and flight and freeze, those sort of threat feelings that have allowed us to survive over thousands of years. It's the same. If you perceive a threat, then there'll be fear that will be activated in the body. But also you can imagine a fear as well. Because of our imaginations, we can also trigger our own fear responses. So if we have a very caring and warm and kind experience in our lives, and that will affect our well-being, that will affect our ability to manage ourselves, and in our bodies we will feel soothed and safe, connected, so that improves our well-being, I think. So, managing ourselves So my thoughts on this is that this is a lot about well-being, really, and the idea of self to self. So if we experience pain, or if we experience anxiety, or anger, or joy, or pleasure, it's not the part of our brain that can see or sense the pain or the pleasure or the joy or the anxiety. It's not that part of our brain that sees it. We have, as human beings, a tremendous ability to regulate and notice ourselves. You don't get a monkey sitting at the bottom of a tree taking its pulse, going, "Oh my goodness me, I'm anxious, I'm nervous, or what will the other monkeys think of me," or anything like that. Our ability as human beings, with our tricky brains, mean that we can see and notice ourselves. We have the ability to be mindful, meaning that it's a human awareness of awareness. So this developing of human awareness is really, I feel, key to self-management, because it allows us to make choices, the choices that we can make. It informs our self-awareness, informs really who we want to be. So I'm going to touch on compassion and a caring motivation. And what that means is that we, as I've said before, we have an awareness of awareness, and we can stimulate ourselves internally and externally, but internally, and we can really develop and grow and cultivate the best part of us, the most compassionate part of us, the most caring part of us, and the most motivated part of us. And so when experiencing suffering, really, it's you can ask yourself, does this make sense in the context of a human experience? Well, yes, it does. If people are feeling pain, it's usually there's a function to that. There's a function which has allowed us as a species to survive. It's a way of our bodies, one way of our bodies saying, we need to take care of ourselves. We need to take care of this situation, and it's the threat. So thinking about compassion, then, you might be surprised as to how much you know about compassion. So compassion and mindfulness, I often think of as like a bird with two wings. They really are dependent on each other. You need to be self-aware, and in order to be compassionate, that's the first step into being compassionate. So I'm going to do an exercise with you for the moment. So bring to mind for me, if you would like to play, if you'd like to engage in this, bring to mind a good friend, and really remember what you like about them. Then imagine this person is distressed in some way. They've got a letter from the hospital that says that they must attend quite urgently. what? How might you respond to that? This good friend is perhaps called you up on the telephone saying, "I've got this letter. I've got to go in. I'm worried. I don't feel confident at all about this." Would you be sensitive to them? Would you be sensitive to their suffering? And what would you like to do? How might you talk to them? What would you say? Would you try and work out a way of helping them? Say some kind, comforting, reassuring, encouraging words to them. Would you actually put this into action? Would you actually take them to hospital? Well, I'll come round. We'll get there. We'll take a taxi together. We'll get the bus. I'll drive round. I'll get you there. So this is the idea, really, is that there's a real wisdom to the element of compassion, and that there's a sensitivity to suffering and a compassionate ability to try and understand it, and something that we move towards. You didn't say to your friend, "Oh, sorry, I can't do this. I'm going on holiday." It was, "I'm going to move towards this difficulty you've got. I'm going to try and understand it. I'm going to be sensitive to it, and I'm going to generally move towards it." So this is the idea of compassion. Now, if you were walking alongside a river and you saw somebody in the water who was distressed, and you ran towards the river and then trying to jump in the water, but then just as you are about to hit the water, you suddenly remember, I can't swim. This wouldn't be a very compassionate act. There's something about the wisdom of learning how to develop how to swim before you can save somebody who's drowning. So there's the courage to act and to try and help. But also, if the wisdom's not there, then that's an important element of compassion. And sometimes people think that compassion is either soft or weak, maybe. So compassion really, for me, is about a motivation to care. It's like the firefighter who goes into the burning building to save the child. That takes courage. That probably is one of the most compassionate acts that there are, is to risk your own life to save another. And although that firefighter may be feeling very, very anxious, it's really, for me, the motivation to care that is the compassion. So compassion is slightly different from kindness. I mean, kindness is incredibly important. I'm not knocking kindness, but compassion isn't unkind. It's not the basis for compassion. Something kind might be remembering somebody's birthday, but it's more about an intention to address suffering and trying your best to alleviate it. So compassion then really isn't a feeling. It's not an anxious feeling or a joyful feeling or a pleasurable feeling. It's more of an action. It's a verb. It's it's about being open to suffering in that moment, acting on that compassionate intention and remaining open and responsive, and having the courage and commitment to be present, with the suffering. The compassion can be seen as a flow. If you can imagine somebody that you care deeply about, maybe a partner, a wife, a husband, somebody who you care deeply about, and they're struggling, they're having a very, very difficult time, suffering, and you can see that, and you may place your hand on their face and say, I see you're suffering, I see that you're in pain, emotional pain, physical pain, I can see that. This is very much about compassion going outwards, and is a very, very important part of human experience. But also there's the compassion coming inwards. It may be that the person you're with has also got their hand on your face and saying, I see you suffering too. And then there's self-compassion, which is, if there's the hand to somebody and you're receiving the hand from somebody else, it's like you've got your hand on yourself, that you're able to allow the flow of compassion inwards as well. So, we're going to talk a little bit now about how our minds work, and how sometimes they don't work for us when we're trying to manage ourselves. We can be very self-critical and experience quite a lot of shame, and in some ways that's helped us survive, but it's not really very, very helpful. And often these feelings of self-criticism and shame are at the root of a lot of mental health difficulties. And it's often about having the compassion to be vulnerable. And in that way, Brené Brown talks about how vulnerability is the most accurate measure of courage. She's a researcher and she likes to measure. And it's not about shame and self-criticism, really, this talk. It's about courage and compassion and connection. That's what we're really concerned with. And we can go into some more detail if you want about self-criticism and how it enables people to survive and can make them feel motivated, but really it's not a healthy motivation, it's not a compassionate motivation. And shame is very complex, and also can be an internal experience, but also an external experience, which has really enabled us to survive very, very difficult times. So often people that are feeling shame will say there's something wrong with me, when a more compassionate approach to yourself and to others would be that you're complete and you're whole. And shaming often involves feeling exposed, feeling vulnerable, and can be experienced as yourself feeling flawed, or there's something wrong with me, or you're inadequate in some way, or you're a bad person. That can often come externally as well. So then, developing compassion, the curious paradox which Carl Rogers talks about, a psychologist who talks about person-centered ways of working, is the curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, as whole and complete, then I can change. That's the important part, is if you're resisting, you're difficulties, then you're not accepting yourself as just as you are, and then the change cannot occur. So Carl Jung actually talks about what you resist persists. So it's really very insightful of these two psychologists, really, I feel, you know. So a way to change then, and what we can control, is our ability to be compassionate to ourselves. And it's something that people can learn, just as I've learnt the flute or the guitar or to sing. It's something that we can learn and develop and cultivate, and we should be gentle with ourselves. Really, really gentle with ourselves, and really understanding, rather than this harshly self-critical or judgmental ways of thinking. You can often ask yourself, when developing self-compassion, what would a good friend say at this time? What would a good friend do at this time when you're feeling difficult, when it's a difficult situation? And as we were saying about compassion in general, being kind to yourself is not a weakness. It's actually a real sign of strength. We can talk a little bit more about that if you want me to expand on that. It's really not a weakness. So suffering then is often perceived as emotional pain times resistance. You know, if you can't accept, if you're struggling to accept, or you're moving away, if you're avoiding, then that can equal suffering. And it's not about self-pity either. It's not poor me. I'm ill, or I'm anxious, or I have a difficulty. It's really remembering that everybody suffers. You know, we're all in this together. As a species, we're all in this together. We are born the same. We experience the same emotional, physical, and mental capacities. Really, it's about a common humanity. So that's a lot about compassion and music, and now we're going to talk about how we can accept ourselves, and how we can then try and make the change that we need to make. And we're going to talk about how we can regulate our emotions, because they play a very, very important role in our experience and how we can care for ourselves. I find this model really, really helpful. It's called a 3-circle model. It's got 3 colours: red, blue and green. And the red is about a threat protection system. It's about the way that as a species we've survived. If there's a tiger, a lion even, in that's going to attack us, we're going to need to, in order to survive, we're going to need to either move away from that, to run away from that anxiety. We're going to get anxious and run, or we're going to get angry and we're going to fight that lion, or we're going to freeze. We're going to pretend to be dead, and then that may enable us to survive, shut down, and that may enable us to survive. So it's a protection system. It's not feeling safe, it's feeling anxious, it's feeling angry. Now the blue circle is about survival as well. It's about reproducing, it's about finding food, it's about trying to achieve, it's about wanting, grasping. And the green, we call that the drive system. The blue circle is called the drive system, because you're driven to survive, driven to reproduce, driven to eat. The green system we could call a soothing system, or an affiliative system. That's about resting. That's about digesting. and that's about connecting to other people. Now, as a species, we are very much a social species, and so it's really important for us to connect with other people. Otherwise, we will not survive. If you're looking at Charles Darwin and his ideas, often people think about evolution and Darwin and they think of survival of the fittest. That's usually what people imagine and think and remember. But actually, Darwin didn't really say that. He said it once, but he said another 5 times it's survival of the friendliest. We are a social species and we need each other. We're all in this experience of humanness in our together. We're all in the same boat. So this is a way that our emotions regulate. You're not, when you're confronted with the lion and surviving, you don't need the part of your brain that's able to do mathematics and to be rational. You need to respond very quickly, and you need to keep yourself protected. And so when you're in the green system, it's very much about the front of your brain, the frontal temporal lobe, where it's about feeling safe and feeling that you're together with people and connected. Now, the drive system is very, very interesting because it feels good. You know, there's a vitality, there's an excitement, there's a pleasure to the blue system. And what's important to remember with this model is that they are all mindsets. You can't, you're not going to have the lion in front of you and you're going to need to think about, oh, it's a female lion. Oh, it's an interesting texture. Oh, it's a different eye colour to the last lion I saw. You've got to respond quickly and run or fight it. And you're not thinking about food when you're threatened by the lion. You're not thinking, I'm hungry. You just need to get out of there or fight it. It's that sort of thing. And you don't want to be soothed. Certainly don't want to be feeling safe and soothed. You want completely the opposite. So this is called a negative bias, and we have this negative bias, and it's the way we've survived. We either approach or avoid something, because if you don't, if the stick comes, it's more important in the wild, because you need to know. Let me be clear then that your brain is always saying better safe than sorry, because if you're not, you could get the stick and you won't eat the carrot the next day. I hope that makes some sense. So it's always overreacting, your brain. Over thousands of years, our environment has changed dramatically, and we still have a lot of the threat responses that aren't very helpful. So what's important then is to try and take in the good. If we have a negative bias, it takes 5 positive interactions to make up for 1 negative interaction. Say if you go shopping for a celebration, a Christmas or something like that, and you go into 10 shops and you buy 10, one thing in each shop, and the person behind the counter in one of the shops says, okay, can you just wait a moment, please? I'm just going to talk to my friend. And then they eventually come back to you and say, oh, hello, how can I help? And then they sort of ignore you and they're not very polite to you. And you give them £20 and they only give you change for 10. And they say, well, can't tell you how many times that happens. And you think, well, when you get home, which cashier out of the 10 do you think you're going to think about? It's probably the one that wasn't as respectful as you wanted them to be. So this is a good example of a negative bias. So the idea is that you can cultivate in your self-management a way of letting in the good. That's really important. Okay, so there's our thing. Now then, we've nearly finished this part, and we'll move on to a practice in a minute. So this is about well-being. Now this is what we really want. We want there to be as little threat as we can, a lot of resting and digesting and soothing and connection and safety, and a medium-sized drive system. Now the drive system is a bit like winning the experience of winning the lottery. If you win millions and millions of pounds, you will not be able to sleep very well. You will not be able to focus. You will have a mild mania. The drive system is there to help us survive, and sometimes it can drive us to do things that we don't need to do. So let's move on. This is usually what people feel a lot of the time, is that they don't have a lot of safety. And we've got to really work at that to counteract that negative bias. And the drive system is quite high, and it can affect sleep. This is the point, is that people who experience a lot of pain don't get as much REM sleep, and they don't feel restored. And so it's very, very tricky then to find, to manage yourselves when we haven't slept as well. We don't feel restored. So this is the idea. If we can move into the green system where we can feel safer, then experiences of sleep can be restorative. Yeah. We can talk about that a bit later, a bit more. Okay then. We're just going to talk a little bit about music therapy. So music therapy is really about, if education if an education is about going from A to B, what is 2 plus 2? Well, it equals 4. Then therapy is more about going from A to A. It's about developing self-awareness. It's about developing the capacity to engage with others. It's not about a process. It's about a process. It's got a long history and requires people to go through a very rigorous training. There are about 1,000 music therapists in the country. So, moving on then. So music, as we said before, goes very, very deep into human experience, and this is how it can make us feel safe, and it can validate us, and we can really feel listened to and soothed and stimulated as well. It's what makes it safe is that it's a profession, and it's regulated, and we're very, very careful about what we do and how we do it. We're akin to clinical psychologists and people like that, and therapists, other psychotherapists. So music then is really interesting because you have the music and you have the emotional effect, but also you have an imagery effect. You can use your imagination with it as well. So we know that all of those are very, very helpful for self-management, as I've discussed earlier. And as a way of structuring a session that's partly to do with talking, it's partly to do with choosing music, it's partly to do with just slowing down the body, and then listening to the choice of music so that it really pinpoints an area of support and care in your mind, in your body, and then can be used. So let's engage in an activity that has music in it, and we're going to do a little bit of compassionate listening. I'm going to talk through quite a quick body scan and then play to you, and then so we're going to talk. I'm going to give you a John Kabat-Zinn a body scan, which is based in an evidence. There's an evidence base for this. Okay, so here we go. So can I invite you then to sit comfortably where you are, as comfortable as you can, and then to start to notice your breath. Just notice how you're breathing at this moment in time. Together, breathing together. Just notice the position of your body in space. Noticing the soles of your feet on the floor. And noticing your toes. We're moving slowly up through the body, noticing any sensations in our feet, any warmth or temperature. Then moving slowly up our left leg. Then moving, scanning up our right leg. Slowly moving our attention to our bodies and noticing the pelvic regions and the lower abdomen, our tummies. Just putting our attention on that. Mindful attention. There's no wrong or right way of doing this, just simply noticing what's happening in the body at this moment in time as we scan further up to the upper torso, our upper back, chest and ribs. Just scanning and noticing the heart and lungs, shoulder blades, all the way up to our collarbones, shoulders. And then from our fingers, palms of our hands, the back of our hands, just simply noticing our forearms on our left arm, upper arm, then noticing our right hand, our fingers, palm of our hand and the back of our hand, moving slowly, scanning up the forearm and elbows, upper arm, scanning the shoulders again. Moving our attention to the neck, throat, and finally your face. Just noticing sensations. Our minds will wander, that's perfectly natural. Just gently and kindly coming back to the face and the head. Scanning right to the top of the head. Now, as the music begins, you could close your eyes if you feel confident, or look into the middle distance for a moment and let the music become part of your body scan. Let the music help you experience deepening your experience of being who you are right here and right now. So in your own time, coming back into the space, into this moment, into this Zoom call. Maybe you need to stretch a little bit or move, and we can continue with our meeting. And just to finish then, to say thank you very much, and I welcome any questions, any discussion, and I hope the resources I've suggested are helpful for you all going forward, and this presentation can be shared so you can have the whole presentation if you wish. So thank you very much in advance. I hope you could hear me okay after that.
Absolutely beautiful. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you
The
so much,
last
Nina.
last part shouldn't be stopped. We can continue more.
I know. Well,
You
I
are
could.
amazing fluter. Amazing, amazing.
Oh,
Very, very positive and soothing and relaxing. And we can certainly associate it with the compassion, the flute music you played, you know.
it's
Beautiful.
so interesting, isn't it? It's so interesting how the music can contain the intention of compassion.
Absolutely. We
Yeah,
certainly experienced that
yeah.
beautifully. Thank you very much, Matt.
Thank you.
Just a very quick question. As you said, finding the safe practice. So finding on our own, I know we try all different music on YouTube and everything. So how do I know that I'm finding the right practice to do on my own? Is there something I should start with where I can know that it's safe and it's effective?
Yes, so I'm struggling a little bit to hear you. Have you got a question there?
Okay, so how do I start
Yeah,
finding the best practice which is safe for me as a start?
yes, great. It's a great question. Thank you. It's great because it's, there's so much music, isn't there? And there's so much personal experience. Where do you start? How do you start to manage yourself? Find the piece of music that you need. A part of me thinks that you can do that in therapy, and you could do that with somebody. You're not alone in finding that music. And I think it's something that really helps cultivate your compassionate motivation. So something that helps you move towards something that's difficult. Maybe in your day you've been very busy. Maybe in your day you've slightly, this is not a criticism, you've overdone it. There's, you need to manage yourself in a way. So something where you're in a blue system, where you're driven, where you're trying to achieve, and you're wanting, and you might find that there's something that can move you from that mindset into the soothing, into the safe, into the connected. So that can mean different things to different people. It doesn't mean that the speed of the music is slow, like the flute music I've just played. Often that can be very soothing. It can be very peaceful feeling. You can really cultivate a sense of contentment. Often, it could be quite a fast piece of music, something that it gives you some pleasure as well. It gives you an energy. It might be that you want to feel more alive. I think that's what music does very well, is it makes us feel alive. So anything which instinctively feels as though you can really attach to something that's supportive, that's kind, that means giving yourself permission to be kind to yourself, something like that can be really helpful, I think. And sometimes it's not the music that you think it is. You might think, I don't quite like that music. But when you're actively engaged in reflecting, in being caring for yourself, in managing for yourself, you may find it's a piece of music that you wouldn't really have chosen. It might be something really new. It might be something that, yeah, you didn't think was quite right, but it might actually work as well. So it doesn't have to be familiar music, but familiar music is really helpful too. Something that doesn't, because as we were saying before, music can make you help, is very conducive to ruminating and your mind wandering. We don't really want to cultivate and reinforce that. We want to try and bring our attention back and really search and work towards the self-management, the supportive inner sort of resources. So if anything, if it makes you sort of, less in the moment, less mindful, you don't want to go mindless, mindful, that might be helpful advice as well. Yeah, thank you, great question.
Just one add-on before anybody else also asks. As you said, we can go with the music therapist. So what this session looks like with the music therapy, if I say,
Yeah,
so I understand it's mindfulness. It's pretty much psychotherapy because you're
yeah.
working all inner self of yours with music to take it forward. So what typically this therapy session with music looks like? I mean, how does it work?
Oh, that's a great question. Every therapist will work differently, and in a sense, it is a psychotherapy, but it's there are different levels. There's a very supportive level, which isn't as how to put this. It's as in depth, but it's more about the supportive. There are other ways of deepening and broadening the process of change and therapy, which I'm trained in. But what I think is, for this talk, it would be helpful to talk about a supportive inner resource, and so the music therapy would start by talking about your day. How's your life been? What's happened since the last time we met, or what? But then what inner resource have you got? What was there, like a nice cup of tea or a coffee that really just made your body relax and just was pleasurable? Or was there a hug from a friend or a really good conversation? Something like that. And then we find that inner resource, the words for that inner resource. I really relaxed. I felt more alive. I felt myself, or something like that. And then what we do is we try and match that to a piece of music. Now, that could be a piece of music that somebody brings into therapy, or it could be a piece of music that I have in mind. And we match that in a good enough way so that supportive resource which has been spoken about and identified, the music then is matched by that, and through the process of listening to it, maybe a number of times, maybe 2 or 3 times, the supportive is then enforced, is cultivated, is grown. And then what we do, I've got some examples here, is we create images. We draw to the music, to the supportive resource, as another way of really trying to make it concrete, to make it clear, to make it longer lasting. And then there's a little bit more talking and encouragement as to how you can use your supportive resource going forward. So those sessions are about an hour. They can be online, they could be face to face, and yeah, it's it's finding the supportive, compassionate resource within the person, and then letting that enabling that to grow. Great question, thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you. Very helpful to understand. Anyone?
Thank you so much. Very, very,
Thank you.
very enjoyable and relaxing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is it available on NHS, Matt? Somebody put a question.
That's a great question. Yes, I haven't had a time to look at the chat while I've been talking. The NHS does employ music therapists, and I'm not sure in the Leicester area whether there is that available. I think what we'll find in the East Midlands generally is that many of the therapists are self-employed. The best way to find a music therapist is to contact either myself, and I can coordinate that, or to contact the British Association of Music Therapy, and there's a register. You can there's a function where you can find a therapist, but you can always contact me, and I really don't mind sharing my email address and my contact details. You know, if you want if you've got some feedback from the talk today, or you just want to know more about music therapy, or you want to reach out, it's absolutely fine. Yeah, happy to be contacted.
Thank you, Matt. And you accept referrals if it's, I mean, from us or among the groups. If I forward that, would that be okay?
Absolutely, yeah, yes, fine, yeah, lovely, thank you.
So yes, thank you very much. It's very helpful. Looking at the time, we already have taken more
Indeed,
than of yours.
apologies.
But I appreciate you taking time, and it was wonderful session. And I think it was eye-opening as well, because music is what we just hear and we pick up anything and everything, but the underline how and what it works and how it works. Now we'll be doing more mindful music practice than just randomly picking up. So thank you very much. I'll be in touch, and we will work ahead together to see how this goes. Thank you again.
Is it okay just to continue? There's quite a poignant thing that's come on the chat,
Yeah.
about sad music. I think it'd be responsible to respond to that. The question is, sometimes when I am sad, I like to listen to sad or slow music, which makes me feel better. Is that okay? Yes, it is. Often people who seek out sad music when they are feeling sad do feel better, because it validates it. You know, I feel sad, the musician or the composer feels sad too, and so the wisdom of sadness is often around connecting, is to allow a connection. It attracts people together, sadness. Now, there's a lot of research about sad music and how sometimes people, when they are feeling sad and listen to sad music, they're drawn towards other people afterwards. Sometimes it can also, it just gives a feeling of pleasure, which allows you to move and regulate yourself. Yeah. But that's, yeah, thank you for that time. It's really important. Yeah, somebody was feeling sad, and just seeing, you know, how to use sad music, it's really important. Thank you. So thank you for all the work you're doing as well. It's fantastic.
It wouldn't have been possible without the great therapists like you, and the physicians and experts in NHS. But thank you. I appreciate everybody coming forward to integrate and cooperate. There is emergency medicine doctor who works with us, and he said, I don't like integrated approach. I like cooperative approach. So let's do the cooperative approach. So I really liked his concept, and I'm very glad this 12 step has come up as cooperative approach. So thank you very much, Matt, for integrating
Brilliant.
therapy. Many more to come, but I appreciate. We'll be talking more about the referrals and cross referrals among ourselves. But thank you everybody who joined today. This recordings will be available on YouTube. Feel free to go and watch and repeat, revise again.
Nehaji, one point.
Yes.
People with fibromyalgia, how can they be in touch, or can they be in a group or something?
Yes, absolutely. Music therapy can work in a group. As I said, yeah, please contact me. I can help coordinate any music therapy, and the BAMT.org is also a place. Yes.
No, I was also asking Nehaji as well, because Arogyam has a group. Is there a group people can join or something?
No, Prabhuji, not yet. We still
Okay.
started the raga therapy, but see how the patients and all the participants feel, and depending on the Med's time, we will be having this talk again to see whether we can formulate a group for the music therapy with pain patients specifically. So that is still not yet decided, but we and Met had a very quick, brief chat whether we can in future do something more about that. So we will get in touch and we'll inform everybody if that is coming into place.
Okay.
At the moment, Raga therapy on Saturdays, and we'll talk further about the music therapy if we can do in the group therapy sessions. We'll inform. Thank you. All have a wonderful evening, and we'll be in touch again, and see you again next Thursday with another meditation session we have, and Monday mindfulness series. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, everybody. All have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Dr. Neha, for organizing this lovely session. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nehaji. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thank you.